The queen sat on her throne of pure crystal, light passing through it in a way that made her skin glow. Queen had ruled the empire for 300 years. Her people were perfect. They had perfect bodies, perfect minds, and perfect technology. They lived longer than any other species. They were stronger. They were smarter. Everything they did was calculated and exact. There was no room for mistake in her civilization. Princess was her only daughter, and she was the embodiment of perfection. At just 120 years old, she had already mastered 12 forms of combat, could speak 14 languages, and had studied the science of genetics and space travel. Everyone in the empire said she would be an even greater queen than her mother. The mining colony on Seven was not important to the empire. It produced metals and minerals that other planets could also produce, but they controlled it because they controlled everything. The colony had 50,000 workers from a dozen different species. Most were here by choice, hired to work. Some were prisoners. Some were slaves. They did not believe in wasting lives, but they also did not believe in giving second chances. Princess stood in the command center of the mining colony. Her silver eyes moved across the screens showing the operation below. Everything was running at perfect efficiency. She had come to the colony to study how different species could work together under supervision. It was boring work, but it was work that needed to be done. The alarm came suddenly. A ship had entered the system. It was not a military ship. The scanners identified it as a human merchant vessel, old and damaged. It did not have weapons. It did not have a military crew. It had carried trade goods and the captain's family. The scan showed it was losing power and falling toward the planet. The colony commander, named or turned to Princess. He waited for her order. It was his job to follow her commands. The princess was the highest authority here. Could have ordered the ship destroyed. It was trespassing in space. The protocol was clear, but something made her pause. She looked at the ship again. Inside it were humans. She had studied humans before. They came from a small planet called Earth. They were weak. They lived short lives. Their bodies broke easily. They had no natural weapons. By standards, they were almost not worth nodding. "Bring it down," the princess said finally, "and bring the crew to holding. I want them examined." The human ship crashed hard on the rocky ground of Seven. The impact would have killed anyone from a lesser species. The soldiers moved in fast, pulling the surviving humans from the wreckage. 7 humans came out alive. 6 were workers. 1 was the captain. His name was Cole, according to the scan. Was not like the other humans. He did not panic. He did not cry. He did not try to run. He stood calmly while the soldiers checked his body for weapons. He looked directly at the princess when she entered the holding area. Most humans would have looked away. Most humans would have been afraid. Simply waited. "You are in space," said. Her voice was cold and exact. "Your ship was not cleared for entry. Your crew carries no goods we want. Under the law, you should be executed." Did not move. His voice was steady when he spoke. "I understand, but I ask that you let the others live. They have families. They were just doing their work. The navigation error was mine. Execute me if you need to, but let them go." The princess stared at him. She had never heard a human speak like this. They were supposed to be selfish creatures. They fought for their own survival. They did not make choices like this. She felt something strange happening inside her mind. It was not logical. It was not efficient, but she wanted to know more about this human. "No," the princess said. "You will all live for now. You will be studied. You will be kept in the colony. The others will work in the mines. You will be in the palace. I want to understand how your mind works." Looked at his crew. The other humans were afraid. He nodded to them, trying to show them it was okay. Then he followed the guards out of the holding area. The Palace of Seven was not as grand as the main royal palace on Prime, but it was still beautiful and cold. It was made of metal and crystal that seemed to float without support. The rooms were filled with light. There were no shadows. Princess brought to a study room and ordered him to wait. Every day after that she came to see him. She asked him questions. Why did humans choose to stay with families instead of moving when they could get better work? Why did they make art when art had no function? Why did they believe in something called love when love could not be measured or used? Answered each question honestly. He spoke about Earth. He spoke about the mountains and oceans. He spoke about his sister and his mother. He spoke about pizza and music and laughter. The princess listened. She took notes, but something was changing. It was not just curiosity anymore. She found herself wanting to spend more time with him. She brought him better food. She let him have books about history. She spoke to him about her own life, something she had never done with anyone outside her family. 3 weeks after arrived, Queen came to the colony. She did not usually visit smaller installations. Something had made her come here. She wanted to see the human that her daughter had spent so much time with. The Queen found them in the study room together, was reading something on a screen, was watching him read. The Queen felt cold anger rise in her chest. Her daughter was wasting time with a weak creature. The Queen said, her voice was sharp, "Explain yourself. What is your purpose with this human?" Stood, she did not lower her eyes from her mother's gaze. "He is mine, mother. My human. He is different from what the data says humans should be. I am studying him to understand why he is different." The Queen looked at her daughter. She looked at, the human stood too, showing respect. He was small compared to his heart was beating fast. She could hear it. But he did not shake. He did not try to run. "What is your name, human?" the Queen asked. "Cole," he said, "captain of the merchant ship Aurora. I come from Earth, a planet in a system you have probably never heard of." The Queen smiled slightly. It was not a kind smile. "You are correct. I have not heard of it, and I doubt I ever will again." But even as she said it, she wondered why her daughter looked at this small, weak creature as if he was something precious. The Queen had never understood such things. In her world, only strength mattered. Only perfection meant anything. She had no idea that this one human would change everything she believed. 6 weeks had passed since arrived at 7. The other humans from his crew had settled into the mining work. They were treated fairly by standards, which meant they were fed, housed, and protected. They did dangerous work, but they survived. Did not work. He lived in the palace and spent his days with Princess. Learned the layout of the palace. He learned the names of the guards. He learned the schedule and their habits. He ate food that was made for him. He slept in a room that had a window showing the stars. Princess brought him clothes to wear and books to read. She introduced him to the royal family and the important people in the government. She asked him questions every day about humans and about Earth. But also saw things that troubled him. He saw how they treated the other species with cold calculation. He saw how they made decisions based only on logic and efficiency. He saw no kindness. He saw no mercy. He understood now that the princess was different, but he also understood that she was alone in her difference. One morning, alarms filled the palace. The sensors had detected a fleet moving towards 7. It was not a fleet. The scanners identified the ships as, they were known throughout the galaxy as a brutal species. They consumed other species for genetic material. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. They had fought them before, but never on territory. They were not supposed to be brave enough to attack an installation. Commander Orr was in the main command center. Screens showed the approaching ships. There were more of them than anyone expected. The colony was not built for a major attack. It was built for mining and for showing strength. The defenses were good, but they were not good enough for a full invasion. Or sent urgent messages to the main fleet. The closest military ships were 3 hours away. They would arrive in 1 hour. The commander began ordering the evacuation of the colony. The princess would be protected. She would be taken to the royal shuttle with a guard. She would leave before the battle began. They came down fast. Their ships were old and damaged, but they were numerous. The colony's defense weapons fired and destroyed several ships, but more kept coming. They did not care about losses. They came in waves, each wave hitting harder than the last. The fighting was chaos. Soldiers died. They broke through the outer walls. They moved toward the center of the colony and toward the palace. The order was given for everyone to evacuate. It was not a choice. It was a command. Princess was in her chambers when the guards came. They told her to come immediately. Was with her. He had been spending the morning studying military strategy with her. The guards did not hesitate. They grabbed both of them and ran toward the evacuation route. The palace was being hit by weapons fire. Walls were collapsing. The lights were flickering. They were close, too close. The guards ran with the princess and moving through hallways that were no longer safe. Then the explosion came. It was a direct hit on the main corridor. The blast separated the princess from her guards, was thrown against a wall. His human body was fragile. The impact hurt badly. He could feel blood in his mouth. His arm was broken, but he could still move. The princess was on the ground 20 feet away. The exit they had been moving toward was blocked by burning wreckage. Behind them, sounds came closer. They were in the palace now. They were hunting. Got to her feet. She looked at the blocked exit. Her mind processed the options. They could try to move deeper into the palace and find another way out. But that would take time. They would find them first. The logical choice was to accept that they would not escape. The logical choice was to wait for death. Had been taught her entire life to accept logic. Logic was survival. Logic was perfection. But she looked at and something in her rejected logic. Stood up despite the pain. He moved toward. His broken arm hung useless at his side. He looked at the wreckage blocking their path. There were machines and equipment scattered everywhere. Grabbed a piece of metal framework and started pushing it against the wreckage. He was trying to create an obstacle. "What are you doing?" the princess asked. She did not understand. "Buying time," said. His voice was rough from the pain. "That's what humans do. We don't always have the best weapons or the strongest bodies. We buy time." Continued working with one hand, dragging heavy equipment and stacking it in the corridor behind them. He created a barrier between them and It would not stop them, but it would slow them down. And when asked him why he was doing this, why he was choosing to stay with her instead of trying to escape alone, gave her an answer that would change everything. "Because you matter to me," he said simply, "more than survival." The warriors came around the corner. They saw standing in front of the princess, his broken body between them and her. They had no experience with this. In their culture, every creature fought only for itself. They did not understand self-sacrifice. They did not understand someone choosing another's safety over their own life. That moment of confusion was enough. Soldiers arrived at the other end of the corridor. They opened fire on the warriors. They were forced to fall back. More came. The tide of battle turned. Fell to his knees. The pain was too much. Blood dripped from his mouth. But he had done what he set out to do. He had protected the princess. He had given her the time she needed to survive. As the soldiers moved in to secure the area, knelt beside. She placed her hand on his shoulder. And for the first time in her life, she felt something move inside her that was not logic. It was not calculation. It was something her species did not have a word for. It was love. The medical chamber was the most advanced healing place in the colony. Every wall was covered with screens that showed data. Machines monitored his body constantly. They measured his heart rate, his breathing, his brain activity, and 1,000 other things that they could measure. The doctors said that should be dead. His human body had taken too much damage. The blast had broken his ribs and his arm. He had lost blood. His lungs were injured. By human standards, he should have been in a hospital for weeks. But the medical technology was not made for humans. It was made for who healed faster and stronger. The doctors worked for 3 days without stopping. They cleaned his wounds. They used machines that somehow made his bones heal. They gave him medicine that his human body had never experienced before. Some of it helped. Some of it made him worse. But slowly, very slowly, began to improve. Princess did not leave his side. This was strange behavior for her. The protocol said that she should report to the Queen and continue her duties, but stayed in the medical chamber, sitting in a chair beside's bed, watching him breathe. She held his hand. She spoke to him even though he could not hear her. She told him about her childhood. She told him about her dreams for the Empire. She told him things she had never told anyone. The guards thought she was wasting her time. The doctors found her presence unhelpful, but no one told her to leave. She was the princess. What she did was her choice. Queen received the reports about the attack. They had been driven back before they could destroy the colony completely. 50,000 workers were saved. The damage was significant but could be repaired. The outcome was acceptable. They had won. But the reports also said that Princess had not reported for duty since the attack. She was in the medical chambers with the human. She was keeping a vigil. The Queen was confused by this. She had never heard of her daughter ignoring duty, was the most responsible member of the royal family. She had never questioned orders. She had never deviated from what was expected of her. The Queen could not understand why her daughter would break this pattern for a human. The Queen decided to visit the colony herself. She arrived 3 days after the attack. Her ship was the largest object in the sky. When she landed, every soldier in the colony came to greet her. The colony commander was nervous. The Queen did not usually visit in person. The Queen went to the medical chamber to see her daughter. Princess was exactly where the reports said she would be. She was sitting beside's bed. She was holding his hand. The Queen looked at her daughter and felt something strange move through her body. It was not anger. It was not concern. It was something else that the Queen could not name. The Queen said. Her voice filled the entire chamber. The princess stood up immediately. She released hand and turned to face her mother. The Queen looked at her daughter's face, looked tired. She looked sad. She looked like someone who cared about something very much. Mother said, "Welcome to the colony." The Queen walked closer to the bed. She looked at. The human was awake. His eyes were open. He was watching her. Most creatures would have been afraid to see the Queen, but just watched her. He did not show fear. He showed nothing. "How is his condition?" the Queen asked. "He will live," said. "The doctors say he is healing well. It will take time. His body is fragile, but he is strong." The Queen remained silent for a long moment. Then she asked the question that would echo through the empire. "Why?" the Queen said. "Why do you stay with him? Why do you waste your time on a creature that will live for only a short time? Ours are measured in centuries. His is measured in decades. You care for him as if he has value. But what is the point?" Did not answer immediately. She looked at, then she looked back at her mother. "He saved my life," said. "During the attack when we were separated from the guards, could have tried to save himself. He could have run. He could have abandoned me. Instead, he stayed with me. He put himself between thee and me. He used his weak human body to protect me. He did not do this because it was logical. He did not do this because it benefited him. He did this because he cared about me." The Queen listened to her daughter. She was processing the words. Logic said that was a fool. Logic said that he wasted his own survival for someone who could easily survive without him. But the Queen was beginning to understand something. Maybe logic was not the only way to understand the universe. "What is your name, human?" the Queen asked. His voice was weak, but it was clear. "Cole, captain of the merchant ship Aurora." "I am Queen," the Queen said, "the ruler of the empire. Your ship entered my space without permission. According to my laws, you should be executed. Why should I let you live?" Thought about the question. He could feel the pain in his body. Every breath hurt. But he answered the Queen with honesty. "I do not know, your majesty," he said. "I do not know your laws or your empire. I know only that your daughter showed me kindness when she could have shown me cruelty. She kept me alive when she could have let me die. And when they attacked, she was the only thing I cared about protecting. That is not something I chose. It is just what happened to me." The queen looked at her daughter. Then she looked at again. For the first time in 300 years, the queen did not know what the logical choice was. Her daughter was feeling something that could not be measured. The human had done something that could not be explained by survival, and somehow, impossibly, it mattered. "You will be given medical attention," the queen said finally. "You will be healed, and then we will determine what is to be done with you." The queen left the medical chamber, but before she did, she looked at her daughter one more time, and in her eyes saw something that had never been there before. It was not approval, but it was something. It was the beginning of understanding. Sat back down beside. She took his hand again, and outside the queen stood in the corridor and asked herself a question that had no answer. What was it about this small, weak creature that made her strong, perfect daughter break all the rules? What was it about a human that could teach us something new? News traveled fast through the empire. A human had fought the At-7. A human had protected the princess. A human was now living in the royal palace, not as a slave or a prisoner, but as a guest. Some saw this as proof that princess was weak. Some said the queen was foolish for allowing it. Some wondered if it was a sign that the empire was declining. But others, especially the younger, began to ask questions. They wondered about humans. They wondered about Earth. They wondered what kind of creature would sacrifice itself for another without thinking about the cost. Recovered over the next month. The medical technology was still difficult for his human body, but it worked. His bones healed. His wounds closed. His strength began to return. The doctors said he would never be completely healthy. Human bodies were not meant to survive weapons and medicine, but he would live. Princess brought him to study rooms and libraries. She showed him the history of the empire. She showed him their weapons systems and their military strategies. She showed him how they thought about war, listened and learned. But he also asked questions that they had never asked before. "Why do you have to destroy everything?" he asked during one lesson. "Why can't you negotiate with your enemies?" "Because," explained, "negotiation is a sign of weakness. If an enemy sees that you will speak to them, they will attack again." "On Earth," said, "we learned that speaking to enemies sometimes stops wars faster than fighting them." Did not believe this was true, but she was interested in how his mind worked, so she let him teach her about human warfare. She learned about tactics that did not involve total destruction. She learned about surrender and mercy and second chances. They were preparing for another attack. The information came from the spies scattered throughout the galaxy. They had lost ships and warriors in the first attack on 7, but they had learned something important. They were not invincible. They could be hurt. They were preparing a much larger fleet. When they came back, they would come in numbers that the colony could not handle. Queen called her war council together. The council included the greatest military minds in the empire. They studied the information and began to plan. The plan was simple and efficient. When they came, they would deploy their most devastating weapons. They would use genetic warfare. They would contaminate the food sources. They would make their atmosphere toxic to physiology. They would die, all of them, and nearby planets would suffer collateral damage, but that was acceptable. Strength required sacrifice. The plan made sense. The logic was perfect, but it had one problem. Near the home system were 3 planets. These planets were home to species that were not at war with they were neutral, but they would die in the contamination. Hundreds of millions of innocent beings would die. Was in the palace when showed him the plan. She wanted his opinion. She valued his perspective now. Read the plan carefully. He understood the thinking. The deaths were acceptable because they were not. The deaths were acceptable because stopping them was more important. "This will not work," said finally. Was surprised. "The plan has been approved by the entire War Council. It is efficient and will achieve victory." "It will achieve victory," agreed, "but it will also create something worse." "What is worse than the threat?" asked. "Enemies that will never surrender," said. "If you kill everyone on the neutral planets, the survivors will become your enemies forever. They will tell their families about what you did. They will spread the story throughout the galaxy. Every species will begin to fear you, and when fear becomes great enough, everyone will unite against you. Listen to his words. She tried to process them using logic. It did not make sense. Fear should make enemies flee, not unite, but something in his argument felt true. "What do you suggest instead?" she asked. Was quiet for a moment, then he explained. "On Earth, we learned that killing a leader is often better than killing an entire population. If you can kill or capture the leader, the military structure will collapse. Without leadership, they cannot fight. Then you can offer them a choice. Surrender or die. Most will choose to surrender." Brought strategy to the Queen. The Queen was in her throne room when her daughter entered, presented the plan that had created. The Queen listened without interrupting. "This is the strategy of a weak species," the Queen said when finished. "It is not the way." "No," Mother said. "It is the human way, and perhaps the human way has value." The Queen considered this. Then she did something unexpected. She ordered brought to the throne room. When arrived, the Queen studied him for a long moment. "Explain your strategy," the Queen commanded. Stood before the most powerful being in the galaxy. He was small and weak compared to her, but he did not show fear. He explained the human way of warfare. He talked about targeting leadership instead of populations. He talked about offering choices instead of only death. He talked about the long-term benefits of mercy. The Queen listened, and somewhere deep inside her, something shifted. A human had changed her mind about how they should fight. The War Council rejected the plan initially, but the Queen overruled them. The military would use strategy. They would target the leader. They would collapse the command structure. They would offer surrender as an option. When they came, the battle was fierce and sudden, but they were ready. Their fighters found the leader's ship and disabled it. The military lost their commander. Without leadership, the fleet began to fall apart. The broadcast a message: "Surrender now and your lives will be spared. Continue fighting and you will die." They began to surrender. Thousands of ships gave up. The battle was won without the devastating weapons. The neutral planets were saved. Hundreds of millions of innocent beings survived because a human taught them something new about strength. The Queen stood in the command center as the battle ended. She looked at who stood beside her daughter. The human had no weapons. He had no special powers, but he had given her the greatest victory of her reign by teaching her that there was strength in mercy. 6 months had passed since the surrender. The Empire was different now. Not changed completely, but changed enough to matter. The Queen had made an announcement that shocked everyone. Cole, a human, would become an official advisor to the throne. He would have a position of authority. He would sit in council meetings and speak his mind. No human had ever been given such power in the Empire. Some saw this as a disaster, some saw it as weakness, but the Queen was the Queen. What she said was law. Moved from the palace at 7 to the main royal palace on Prime. The planet was beautiful in a way that Earth could never be. The sky was purple. The buildings floated in the air, held up by technology that did not fully understand. Everything was perfect and clean and empty of the chaos that made Earth feel alive. But as he walked through the halls of the palace, began to teach. He taught the younger about humans. He taught them about Earth's history. He taught them about art and music and food and love. He taught them about families that stayed together. He taught them about sacrifice and protection. He taught them about choosing others before yourself. Some of the young listened and learned. Some rejected everything he said, but seeds were planted, questions were asked. The certainty that they were better than all other species began to crack. One evening, the Queen asked to speak with privately. They stood in an observation chamber, looking out at the stars. Below them, the city lights of Prime spread across the planet like a map of perfection. "Tell me something," the Queen said. "You came to my world as my property. I could have executed you. I could have enslaved you. Instead, I kept you alive. My daughter cares for you, yet you do not seem grateful. You seem to see what we do wrong more than what we do right." thought about this question carefully. The Queen deserved an honest answer. "I am grateful," he said finally. "You saved my life. Your daughter saved my life. I would not be alive without you. But gratitude and honesty are different things. You asked me to be an advisor, not a servant. An advisor must tell the truth, even when the truth is difficult." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she asked another question. "Why do you serve us? You are not one of our people. You have no family here. You could ask for a ship and return to Earth. I would grant your wish. Why do you stay?" Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was his home. Somewhere out there were people who would never believe what he had experienced. But he did not feel called to return there. "I stay because your daughter believed I had value," said. "I stay because you were willing to listen to someone you thought was beneath you. I stay because my people have a saying. We are stronger when we work together with people different from us. Your empire became stronger because you listened to me. Maybe I can help make it stronger still." The Queen nodded slowly. "You are correct about one thing. We were stagnant. We had achieved what we thought was perfection. But perfection without growth is only stagnation. We stopped asking questions because we thought we already had all the answers. You have shown us that there is always more to learn." "Your people are brilliant," said. "They are strong and disciplined and capable. I am not here to change that. I am here to show you that brilliance can work alongside compassion. Strength can live with mercy. Logic can work with emotion." The Queen turned away from the stars. She looked at directly. "Humans are fragile creatures. Your bodies break easily. Your lives are short. You cannot fight like we fight. You cannot think like we think. By every logical measure, you are inferior to us. And yet, one human has changed the destiny of my empire. How is this possible?" Smiled. "Because we are not fragile in the ways you think. Our bodies break, yes, but our will does not. Our lives are short, so we make every moment matter. We cannot fight like you, but we can fight differently. We use creativity instead of strength. We use adaptation instead of perfection. We use each other instead of standing alone." The Queen looked out at the stars again. She thought about what had told her. She thought about her daughter, who had discovered something in a fragile human that they had lost. She thought about her empire, which had become stronger through mercy instead of power. "You may stay," the Queen said, "as long as you wish, and you will continue to teach my people. Show them what humans can offer. Show them that there is more than one way to be great." Bowed. "Thank you, Your Majesty." As the evening passed, the Queen left alone in the observation chamber. She went to find her daughter, was in her own chambers studying the writings of human philosophers. When she saw her mother, she stood up. "He is staying," the Queen said simply. "He will remain as an advisor to the empire." Smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. "Thank you, Mother." The Queen reached out and placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. It was a gesture of approval. It was rare for the Queen to show such feeling. But in this moment, she understood something about her daughter that she had never understood before. Love was not a weakness. It was its own kind of strength. 1 week later, stood on a great balcony overlooking the colony at 7. Below him, and humans worked together to rebuild what they had destroyed. They were building structures that blended technology with human design. The buildings were efficient and beautiful. They were perfect and alive at the same time. Princess stood beside him. She had taken a position overseeing the reconstruction. She wanted to be part of creating this new blend of their two peoples. The sun was setting, and its light painted the sky in colors that Earth's sun could never create. Purple and gold and silver mixed together. It was beautiful and strange, and unlike anything had ever seen. "Do you regret coming here?" asked. "Your ship crashed by accident. You could have hated this entire experience." Thought about everything that had happened. He thought about the danger and the pain. He thought about being a prisoner. He thought about the battle and he thought about all of it. "No," he said, "I do not regret it. My people have a word for moments like this. We call it destiny. I do not know if I believe in destiny, but I know that my life has meaning here in a way that it did not have before. I came as a prisoner. I stayed as someone who was valued. And now I am part of something greater than myself. That is worth any pain. Below them, the reconstruction continued, and humans worked side by side. The age of isolation was ending. The age of cooperation was beginning. And it had all started because one human taught an alien queen that perfection could be improved. It had all started because a small creature from a fragile world showed the strongest species in the galaxy what it meant to be truly brave. The story would be told throughout the Empire for generations. They would speak of the human who changed history. They would speak of the princess who saw value where others saw only weakness. They would speak of the queen who learned that strength and mercy could be the same thing. But that night, as the sun set and the stars emerged, simply stood with and watched the world begin to change. He watched his impossible life unfold into a future he had never imagined. And he understood that sometimes the greatest victories were not won with weapons or strength. Sometimes they were won with something much simpler. They were won with the courage to care about someone different from yourself.